It's so good to see all of you, especially here to support Brother Shelton as he gives his first public lecture. We're very proud of him, and we're looking forward to his talk. His theme is evidence of God in the world around us. So let's give our attention to Brother Shelton.
Let's take a trip into a time machine. The year is 1953. A scientist by the name of Stanley Miller is setting out to recreate life out of absolutely nothing. So he sets up an experiment. He takes a test tube, and inside of this test tube, he pours in some boiling water. And on top of that, he pours in a mixture of different gases. Then he seals his test tube up. Then he takes it and he decides to zap some electricity through it over time, sort of like lightning bolts over time. And he leaves it there to do his thing. Now, within a week of him returning to this, he looks at it and he finds that it's produced the foundation of proteins. And suddenly he's just overjoyed. Well, what's the significance of proteins, you may ask? You see, you need proteins to make DNA. And you need DNA to make life. So he figured that if he could reproduce life itself, the foundation of life itself, inside of this experiment, he could prove that life arose on its own. Well, needless to say, later on down the line, there were many flaws found in his experiment that really invalidated it. But the fact that he was able to do something like this is really something for us to think about today. You see, because this wasn't just a random experiment with random items inside of it. Everything in this experiment represents something. It all represented prehistoric Earth. You see that boiling water, it represented the sea on the Earth at the time. Those gases represented the Earth's atmosphere at the time that electricity represented lightning on Earth at the time. He recreated prehistoric Earth. But friends, if all of these things represented something, then that leaves one big hole in his entire experiment. What did the scientist represent? Would he not have represented God, a creator, since he's the one who put all that stuff together in the first place? We've been there without him. Yes, friends, many ones in our world today doubt God's existence and go to great lengths to disprove that he exists. But admittedly, it doesn't happen too often in our area since we do live in the Bible Belt of the United States. But all around the world, all around the United States even, people are constantly trying to disprove that God exists. But regardless of all of that, we have a lot of evidence for the existence of a creator. And whether or not we believe in one actually affects the meaning of our lives. You see, without a creator, that would mean everything we see is by accident. Everything we see is up to chance. Nothing has a purpose. But is that really the case? Turn with me, if you will, in your Bible, and let's see what the Bible says about it. Over in the book of Hebrews. And that's Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4. And here it reads, "Of course, every house is constructed by someone, but the one who constructed all things is God." And friends, this verse here is very straightforward for us. It tells us things like houses have builders, right? And the builder of everything is God. So let's think about that for a moment. Why is it that we know that a house has a builder? Why is it that if we're walking in the forest one day and we run upon a house, why do we know someone built it? Well, for what we know, we don't just find random houses out in the wild, right? But more than that, we know that houses are too complicated to just appear out of anywhere. We know we're not going to find a perfectly cut 2x4 wood plank lying right beside 10 other perfectly cut 2x4 wood planks, all at the same size, with the same amount of nails on both sides, all forming up something like a wall with wires inside of it, paint on the sides, a roof on the top, furniture inside to form a house. It's just far too complicated. We know someone built that house. And that's just the house. The things around us are even more complicated than the house. So let's talk about a couple of them. And there's really so many things to talk about that we could go on all day. But time won't let us, so we're going to talk about a few. And the first thing we're going to talk about is gravity. Right? Because we know what gravity is, right? It's the thing that says what goes up must come down. You know, if you throw something in the air, gravity pulls it back down. Right? I jump in the air, gravity pulls me back down. But gravity is not just something that we find here on Earth. Gravity we find all throughout the universe. Okay? Gravity allows the planets to orbit the stars. It allows the moon to orbit the planets. and it allows life to exist here on Earth. And gravity all around the universe, there's one formula for measuring gravity. There's one strength. And so this one formula has to be measured in just the right way so that it's strong enough to hold an entire planet in orbit. But yet and still that it's light enough so as to not crush a butterfly on their very planet. Think about that, friends. If someone turned the dial up on gravity just a little bit, we'd all be flat on our faces. And that butterfly wouldn't even be able to fly as it does today. It probably wouldn't even be able to move. And that wouldn't only affect things here on Earth, it would also affect things outside of Earth. The stars, they rely on gravity to even do what they do. They need pressure inside of them. And so with stronger gravity, they would have too much pressure inside of them. All the stars would just burn out. We wouldn't even be left with the sun at the end of the day, after very long. So gravity really can't be too strong. Now, let's look at on the other side of the coin. What if it were weaker? Well, if gravity were weaker, then not only would we just be floating around here on Earth, not able to do anything, once again, that would cause plenty of problems outside of Earth too. Those same stars, they wouldn't even have enough pressure inside of them to even be able to burn. And so put simply, with weaker gravity, the stars would be unable to shine. Those stars there would all burn out, and we wouldn't have anything in the night sky for us to see. And so it really can't be too weak. Instead, gravity's just right in the middle. It's perfectly balanced so that everything in the universe can exist in harmony, as it does, so that life can exist here on Earth. So you tell me, was it built, or was it an accident? Another thing we want to talk about is the Earth's atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere, it does more than give us air to breathe. Yeah? Have you ever been looking at the sky in the middle of the night one time, maybe admiring the stars? And then all of a sudden, you see something in the corner of your eye go shooting across the sky for just a moment. Not only did you just see a beautiful shooting star, you also saw the atmosphere doing its job. You see, because here near us, the atmosphere is safe. It keeps all the air we need close to us so we can breathe it whenever we need to. But on the outside of the Earth, it's built up a little differently. Out there, it's made up as sort of a shield. And that shield protects us from things that are flying through space, such as chunks of rock, asteroid chunks, that will potentially crash into the Earth and injure someone. Instead, our atmosphere just burns it all up before we even see it. And we get to see it up there as a shooting star. And friends, we can think of the many other properties of the universe, such as gravity and the atmosphere of the Earth. We can think of them this way. I want you to imagine a control room for the entire universe. To do so, I want you to think about an airplane cockpit. Right? It's that room in the front of the airplane. It's got all these knobs and meters and levers everywhere, and that pilot has to make sure that everything's in just the right spot if that plane's gonna fly. Now, I want you to think about one of those, but I want you to think about one the size of this Kingdom Hall, with just as many knobs, levers, and meters everywhere, even on the ceiling. Right? That's how many things have to be in just the right place in order for life to even be able to exist on Earth. So you tell me, did someone set those knobs, or did they just appear that way? And all those things in that control room are really non-living things. They're all tuned so acutely, but yet and still they're not even alive. Don't you think something alive would take even more precise tuning? Living things, we're so complex that we still don't even understand everything about ourselves. And the few things we do understand are enough to send our heads spinning. So we won't spend too much time with those. We'll just talk about our DNA. Right? We all know what it is, right? It's the thing that makes us special. It's the thing that makes us individuals, makes us unique. Our DNA is like a recipe for our body. It directs how we grow, how we look, how we think, how we feel. And our DNA is made up of 4 different parts. Right? And each of these different parts has a different letter to represent what it is. So think of them as like DNA letters. And so you can take these 4 different letters and you can rearrange them in certain ways to get DNA words. Right? And then you put those DNA words together and you form DNA sentences. And so each DNA sentence tells a different part of you how to be you. Right? One tells your hair what color to be, your eyes what color to be. It tells your voice how to sound even. And one piece of our DNA, a piece we can't even see with our eye, it's so small, is about 3 billion of these DNA letters long. To put that into perspective, if you took all those letters out of that one piece and you wrote it down in a book, you'd be able to fill up an entire 1,000-page telephone book, one of those old, thick telephone books. And you'd have enough letters left over from that one piece to fill up about 200 more of those telephone books. And all of that fits inside just a really small piece of it. If you were to take all the DNA from your body, stretch it out side by side like a rope, you'd be able to go from where you sit in your chair all the way to New York, all the way to China, all the way to the sun, and back to your chair again. And you'll be able to do that over 600 times. Now, all of that is meaningful information. There's enough information inside just one of us to fill up all the libraries on Earth. So you tell me, was it created or was it an accident? And DNA is really kind of complicated. So let's take a breather and let's go for a visit to an island. All right? So imagine you're on an island. You wake up here one day, you realize there aren't any other people around you, but you see plenty of plants, plenty of animals around. And so one day you get a little curious to know what else is on this island. So you go walking around. And on your walk through, you run into this boulder here. And on this boulder, you see the words, James 1800. And you stop, and you look at that boulder for a moment, and you say, wow, that's amazing. Those plants, those animals, that water just kept hitting that rock in just the right place to make the words James 1800. Is that what you think? No, friends. You know someone wrote those words on that rock, don't you? You know you don't just find letters out in the wild. And you know you didn't just find letters. You found words with actual meaning to them. And those words that you found are really words that a 4 or 5-year-old child could have written. But yet and still you know someone wrote those. So should it make sense then that since we can't even understand our DNA very well, that only a superhuman mind could have written something as complicated as the code of life we find inside of it? Yes, friends, the code of life that is our DNA is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Jehovah's creation. And studying all of his creation actually happens to have yet another benefit for us. You see, studying his creations not only gives us evidence that he exists, but it also helps us to learn about him as a person. See what I mean by that? Open with me, if you will, to the book of Romans, in chapter 1. We're going to look at Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. Here it reads, for his invisible qualities are clearly seen from the world's creation onward, because they are perceived by the things made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are inexcusable. This verse here is telling us that we get to see Jehovah's invisible qualities, his personality traits, as it were, through his creation. You know, you can tell things about a gardener by the way they take care of their garden, right? There's always this one house in your neighborhood, you see it all the time, it's always so well taken care of, right? It's always properly weeded, the flowers are tended to. One of the things you know about that gardener is that they likely have a lot of love, right? They enjoy taking care of things because of the way they take care of their garden. And likewise, Jehovah has qualities. And we get to learn about his qualities through our creation, through his creation. And one of his 4 main qualities is wisdom. And we get to learn about his wisdom in things like the cycles he designed to sustain life on Earth. For instance, we have the water cycle, right? It brings up water from all over the earth, it cleans that water, and then it brings it back down all over the earth, giving clean water for everyone. We also have the oxygen cycle, which makes sure that humans and plants and animals always have clean air to breathe. Right? We as humans, we breathe in oxygen, right? And then we breathe out carbon dioxide. Well, plants, they breathe in carbon dioxide, and they breathe out oxygen. And we breathe in oxygen and complete the cycle. These cycles don't need batteries, they don't need electricity, they all sustain themselves, and so that life on earth always has what it needs to continue going. Does that not show great wisdom on Jehovah's part to design something like that way ahead of time? And so far, we've really talked a lot about creation. But what else do we have that gives us evidence of creation? Well, we have this book right here, the Bible. You see, in many ways, the Bible gives us evidence of a divine author, namely in its accurate prophecies and in the wisdom we find in its principles. You know, I check the weather all the time, just so I can sort of plan my day around what's going to be going on, right? But here recently, when I started checking, I really don't pay attention to anything past the first few hours of where I'm already at. You know, the weather predictions, they change so often that I don't really feel like it's a point, quite honestly. You know, one time I checked it, and it said it was a thunderstorm in my area where I was. And then I looked up in the sky, and it was bright and sunny outside. I see a thunderstorm. You know, I checked it for the weekend that was coming up one time, and it said it was going to be raining all 3 days. And I checked the next day, it said it was going to be sunny all 3 days. And I checked when the weekend came, and it's raining all 3 days. So, you know, which one is it? Right? We as humans, we can't even accurately predict the weather, even a day in advance. But the Bible has prophecies that are predicted up to centuries in advance, centuries of years in advance, yet still they all come true. For instance, there's a prophecy regarding ancient Babylon, right? At the time, ancient Babylon was one of the centers of the world. It's one of the political centers, the religious centers, the population centers of the world. It was huge. And no one at the time would have ever thought that it would have just fallen the way it did. But in 732 BCE, Isaiah prophesied just that. He said that the city of Babylon was going down. And not only did he leave it at that, he also got a little specific with it. He gave us some details. Let's take a look at some of those details he pointed out at Isaiah chapter 44. It's Isaiah chapter 44 and verse 27. And we won't read these word for word, but we'll look at the details that they have inside of them. So there, at the end of chapter 27, at the end of verse 27, it says, Jehovah is saying, I will dry up all your rivers, symbolizing what he would do to the Euphrates River later on. Down there in verse 28, we read that Cyrus will be the one leading the charge against Babylon. In chapter 45, in verse 1, near the end there, we read that the gates would not be shut, letting us know that Babylon's gates will be open. And back in chapter 19, we read that Babylon will never be inhabited again. So, surely enough, about 200 years later, every single one of those details came true. History shows us that Cyrus led the charge against Babylon, and he and his men stopped up the water in the Euphrates River, effectively drying it up, as Jehovah had said. And they had access to the city through open, unguarded gates due to a festival in the city at the time. We can take a look at it even now, and we see that last part of the prophecy come true. It's never been inhabited again. Nothing but ruins left in its place. Yes, friends, every single detail was fulfilled. And the same is true for the many other prophecies in the Bible. You know, we as humans, we can't even foretell the weather, even a day in advance, really. How can we possibly have foretold something like that centuries in advance? And the prophecies in the Bible are really only one of the pieces of evidence that we have of a divine author. Have you ever heard of someone who's really just having a rough go of life? You know, they're not really making the best decisions, and their life shows it, right? But then all of a sudden, they learn of the Bible. They learn of Bible principles. They start to apply Bible principles, and their life just exponentially improves. I'm sure you have. In fact, our Watchtower actually publishes a recording series entitled The Bible Changes Lives. And we're actually going to take a look at one of those accounts right now. We're going to look at the account of a man named Adrian de la Fuente. He was born in Mexico, and it was a beautiful area of Mexico, but unfortunately it was bogged down by crime, so that made it very dangerous to live in. As a young boy, Adrian was actually baptized in the Catholic Church, because he said he feared displeasing God and burning forever in hell. Unfortunately for Adrian, also at a young age, he was 5 years old, his father left him. And so that left his mother to work longer hours outside of the home, which meant that there was no parental supervision at home for Adrian. So surely enough, the exact thing you think will happen is what happened. He says he started skipping school and associating with some of the older boys in the neighborhood, doing what they did. Here's what he said about the situation. He says, "They taught me to swear, smoke, steal, and fight with my fists. Since I like to dominate others, I learned boxing, wrestling, and martial arts, as well as how to use weapons. I was often involved in gunfights, and several times I ended up covered with blood and was left for dead on the street. How much sorrow I caused my mother when she found me like that and had to pick me up and rush me to the hospital." Isn't that something? He was in this sort of condition multiple times, bloodied and wounded on the street, and wasn't even 16 years old at the time. But when he was 16 years old, he got a visit from a childhood friend. One of his friends' names was Jorge. And Jorge told him he was one of Jehovah's Witnesses now, started to explain a few things to him from the Bible. Adrian realized this was all making sense to him. So he accepted a Bible study. And here's the first thing he says about what he learned. He says, "I was greatly relieved to know the truth about hellfire, that it's not a Bible teaching. Once I learned that, I no longer felt a morbid fear of God. Rather, I began to see him as a loving father who wants the best for his children." Isn't that how we see him today? Because that's what he is. And so Adrian continued along. He continued to progress in his Bible study, and he said that he learned of Bible principles, and he saw the need to start applying them. One of the ones that affected him was that at 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad association, spoiling useful habits. He said he saw the difference between those in the Christian congregation and his old associates that he used to hang out with. And so he replaced his old association with new association, and he saw the benefit that it had for his life. Another principle that helped him was that at Romans chapter 12, and verses 17 through 19, where we're told, "Return evil for evil to no one, be peaceable with all men." And that one was really put to the test for him one day, actually. Here's what happened to him. He was returning home, and he says, "A group of youth from a former rival gang attacked me, and the leader struck me on the back, shouting, 'Defend yourself.' At that moment, I said a brief prayer to Jehovah, asking him to help me endure the assault. Although I felt a very strong urge to retaliate, I was able to get away instead." And some of you may say he should have fought, but I'm not here to comment on that. What we are here to comment on, though, is how that actually benefited him in ways he didn't even know at the time. See, the very next day, he ran into the leader of that group of youth alone. And here's what happened when he saw him. He said, "The youth came right up to me and to my surprise said, 'Forgive me for what happened last night. The truth is, I would like to become like you. I want to study the Bible.' And so thanks to that, they began to study the Bible together. And at that time, Adrian says he made a firm decision to continue studying and not let anything hold him back. He knew that associating regularly with God's people would heal his emotional wounds and give him the family that he needed. And soon after that, in 1991, he was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He's had the privilege of serving as a full-time minister for the past 23 years. He was able to go and serve at the Mexican branch office, where he met his wife, Claudia. And they were able to go and serve at the Mexican Sign Language congregation. And they are now serving in Belize, where the need is greater. Here's what he says about his new life. He says, "Although our life is much simpler here, we have all that we need to be happy. We would not change it for anything. I am grateful that Jehovah drew me to himself and to his worshipers, who patiently and kindly taught me to apply Bible principles in my life." Don't we see the benefit the Bible principles have for us? And friends, most of us haven't been to school in quite some time, right? In fact, me even mentioning the word might make some of the young ones in the audience just groan. We don't like it. And this talk was full of facts and topics that may have made you feel as though you were right back in school yet again in your desk. And I get that. But friends, the purpose of this talk is not for us to remember the exact pressure of gravity or the specific string of DNA that causes brown versus blonde hair, so we can take a test on it later on. The purpose of this talk is for us to realize and appreciate the fact that the things around us are far too complicated to have just happen on their own. If someone told you that your cell phone or your tablet that you have just appeared in a warehouse one day, and they mailed it to you, well, you wouldn't believe that for even a second, would you? You know that tablet's way too complicated to just appear on its own. And that's just a tablet. You know, the things around us are even more complicated than that's happening. So is it really reasonable to believe that it all just could have appeared out of nowhere? No, friends, we have a creator, and his name is Jehovah. He gave us a manual on how to live our lives so as to have the best life possible, and that manual is the Bible. The principles we find inside of the Bible result in happiness that far outweigh any other way of living. And we have repeated examples of just how drastically people's lives improve when they apply Bible principles. So friends, as you go throughout your lives on your course of dedication to Jehovah, or if you're continuing your life in your course of dedication to Jehovah, be assured of three things. Be assured that we have a creator. His name is Jehovah. Be assured that his guidance is the best guidance. And be assured that when we follow his guidance, we will never be disappointed.
Brother Shelton, I'm sure from the applause you can understand that everyone enjoyed your lecture this morning, and we're very grateful to have you as a speaker. You know, it's a wonderful thing when we see young men come up. Many of us here remember you giving your first Bible readings in the congregation, and to see you giving a public address, it really warms our hearts. So we pray that you'll continue with your progress. Friends, if you